a sneak peek at what's coming up next.
In the world, I actually don't think of autism as a medical condition first, even though there are co-occurring medical conditions.
Yes.
I do think of it as a biological condition, but I also don't think of my brown eyes or my Italian American heritage as medical, right?
Okay.
So being Italian American, growing up in Connecticut as an Italian American, there is a very distinct culture that I can spot. So,
Sorry.
so I think if we look at autism like a culture,
which it is,
right? Then like you can find your people. It doesn't matter if they're diagnosed, undiagnosed. Like I can find my people really quickly, just like I can find Italian Americans.
Right.
And I'm not Russian or Russian American, but I can recognize.
Is it the train collection? Is that what gives it away?
Welcome to another episode of On the Spectrum Podcast. My name is Nick.
And I'm Steven.
And as I always do at the beginning of every episode, we do not presume to be experts of anything, nothing at all. We're just two human beings who happen to be on the spectrum, trying to figure out life and trying to learn the best we can about autism, about people in the world, and learning how to work our way through the world itself. Now, if you like, dislike, or whatever the heck of anything you hear in the episode, please put a post on any social media whatsoever.
Okay.
I'm going to stop right there this time because, wow, I ran out of breath like halfly through.
Should we get like a little treadmill so you can practice?
Whew.
You can get
I need cardio. I need cardio. I'm getting.
I'm going to get you a sitting treadmill where you can sit in the chair and just move your legs.
Oh my God, that'd be so
recording.
great. All right, I can increase my cardio. Okay. Anyway, so we've got a special guest for us today. We interview quite a lot of people, but today we have somebody who we can actually say is a doctor.
Somebody who actually is an expert.
A DR. Oh, yeah. We actually have an expert. My goodness, we have an expert in something.
We're not experts.
No, we are not experts in much of nothing. But anyway, welcome, Dr. Angela Lauria.
Hello, it is nice to be here.
So
Angela, you have a podcast as well.
Oh,
I do.
As well as she's got something else cool that she does. What's that other cool thing you do?
Are we talking about books?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, good. I'm like, I don't know. I do so many cool things. My autistic special interest from a super young age has been writing books and helping other people write books. Wrote my first book when I was 7 years old.
Is that your book up above your head?
Yes, there are many of my books back here. In fact,
I thought maybe you were trying to promote that book because it's facing the camera.
There it is. That is my newest book. It's called The Equalizing Quill, and it is about how neurodivergent people can use AI as an accessibility tool.
Oh, there you go.
That's something I haven't even really thought about.
Really?
Because I look into, I'm more the tech person out of the two of us.
Definitely are.
And I read a lot about like AI and tech, and the computer we're using, I put together. I like building computers and stuff.
Yeah, love
but
that.
AI, I haven't really thought about the impact or the implications of AI for accessibility. It's something I haven't really put together in my head.
Right.
Yeah, it is a great way to augment, and also because we are bottom-up processors as autistic people, very often we need to build a case in our communication. So we're giving all the details, and our readers have no idea what the hell we're talking about. And so one of the things you can do with AI is have it read and interpret your content for a neurotypical audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I write a lot for autistic people, but I write very differently for autistic people than when I'm writing for a broader audience. So
I'm assuming there's a lot less fluff in that.
Fluff in what the neurotypical people like?
No. I'm assuming there's a lot less fluff when you're writing for a neurodivergent audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
it's way more to the point.
We love details. We love facts. We love getting there.
Yeah,
and
we don't need to know something is beautiful.
So because they're top-down processors, they will form a conclusion I know it's going to sound crazy because I don't know why anyone would do this, but this is what they do. They form a conclusion and then look for details. They can't even hear the details before.
Right.
But autistic people were like, let me gather all the details and then I will develop a hypothesis based on the details, which seems like a smart way to go about it. But if you're trying to, you mentioned that I was an expert and I immediately went into full imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, what am I an expert on? However, I
didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
No. But I do have multiple degrees in communications.
Right.
And
you do have a PhD. You are an expert.
Because no one ever fucking understood me. Oh, do I get to swear on here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, please.
No
we
one
mark
ever
the episodes as explicit.
Yeah, we do.
I'm explicit. It's going to be explicit. I'm just letting you know. But no one ever understood me. And so, of course, I have a PhD in communications because I'm like, what is happening? I'm literally giving you 10 facts, giving you my conclusion, and then you assume I'm being manipulative.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how did we get to manipulative? I just get you give me your conclusion.
Yeah.
Here are the facts.
I do have a
Here's
question.
Here's my conclusion.
Right.
Yes.
For both of you, actually.
Oh.
Yes.
What you're mentioning, it kind of reminds me of this phenomenon. I will describe it like as a younger person, because I've learned how to better, I guess you would maybe call it fluff, but how to add more details or add more things that help people along.
Soft skills, my guy.
But it was when I used to get called out a lot when I was younger because things made sense to me going from point A to point B to point C.
Yeah.
But when I tried to talk to other people, like I have no fucking clue how you got there. They would just be like,
right.
It would seem to them like I was just pulling this out of nowhere. I'm like, no, it makes a logic. Like,
right.
My train of thought makes sense to me, but to everyone else, it seemed like I was. I don't know.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, and then people thought of me as like thought of me as like argumentative. Like I remember being called a lawyer all the time. My mom would be like, "Oh, you're going to be a lawyer," and I was like, "Well, what is the alternative?"
Yeah, me too.
Like. I don't understand what the possible alternative to gathering facts and presenting a position on those facts would be. Say random shit? That doesn't seem like a good idea.
But it seems like that's what they do. Not that I'm trying to other anybody in this conversation. It's just that's what NTs seem like they do. They just throw shit out there.
That's why I got the PhD, right? Because I'm like, what are you doing?
Right.
But it is kind of interesting. And I do believe in neurodiversity, like biodiversity.
Yeah.
Like I love a whale, but we don't only want whales. Like you got to mix it up, right?
Yeah, we need lobsters so I can eat
Are you calling me fat? No, I'm just kidding.
I not yet. Hang
Am I the whale in this scenario?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
But the thing
am I Brendan Fraser?
Doing, which like I hate that movie. Let us not discuss.
Okay.
So what they're doing, which is cool, I'm like, I can't make my brain do it any more than they can make theirs do what mine does. But they can actually just reach a conclusion without data.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
it's
is
based on feelings.
Just this little
it's
feeling
based on
down
feelings.
here.
That's so great. And listen, if there is a crisis, that ability to do that is probably like in the moment, I am a disaster because if I don't have facts and I'm being confronted with like lights and sound and noise, and then my brain is completely seized up and I can't think, like, thank God I am around a neurotypical person who can tell me there is a fire, exit the train. Like, because otherwise I'm like, what do we do?
Yeah.
It's loud. There's a noise. There's a sound. I don't know. What do we do? And then I just stand there and flap.
And I was just going to say, in my case, I don't help my case for the whole lawyer thing because I like to play devil's advocate.
That's true.
And I like to try to understand
I love that.
other points of view.
Yeah.
I get myself into trouble a lot because people will assume that I agree with whoever I'm defending. But it's not. It's just that I'm trying to get you to understand their point of view. So, like, let's say if you're talking about politics or something and you don't like conservatives or something, like, well, why do they have that point of view? How did they come to that conclusion?
Right.
Why do they feel that way? And they're like, well, you're just defending them. I'm like,
no, you're reverse engineering bottom up processing because it's so fun. You're like, oh, how could you reach that conclusion?
Right.
Here are a set of facts that could lead one to that conclusion.
All right. People get mad.
I know.
It's like,
because they automatically assume that if you're understanding, you automatically agree.
It's
I
talked
talked about that last night in rehearsal.
Maybe not the best example, but for instance, let's say, Trump is very controversial.
Sure.
If you point out maybe one good thing that the Trump administration did, I'm not going to, but I'm just saying, let's say somebody
it's hard
did.
to come up with something, but
right,
yeah,
but the point I'm trying to make is that all of a sudden people are like, you love Trump, and it's like, no. I just what the hell?
Well, so the way this showed up for me would be that like I would reach my conclusion, I would share it.
Yeah.
And growing up, I was undiagnosed. I was diagnosed at 39. And so then I
was diagnosed at 36.
Oh, nice. And what I thought other people would do is they would share their facts and how they reached their conclusion. We'd have this like great conversation. Like I'm very open to whatever it is.
Right.
But instead they would stop talking to me, like say I was opinionated and like my mind couldn't be changed. And I'm like, I develop opinions, but my mind can be changed. Do
you think that was made worse by the fact that you're female?
I think, well, yeah,
Maybe.
female, but also I think it's more undiagnosed because now.
I was just thinking that sometimes people are less willing to, like, if someone's opinionated and they're a guy, there's some sexism.
Yeah.
Also goes on.
Well, so
there's some perceptualness there.
The reason why women are often not diagnosed is they're like really good at masking. And then there's all like the patriarchy and we're socialized to act a certain way. I miss those memos. Like bless their hearts.
And thank God a lot of people did.
I love that other women got that message to be quiet. I never shut up. I didn't know that would help. And despite the fact I was like kicked out of every class, kicked out of every job, kicked out of every friendship group, I still never somehow learned to like, I don't know, make eye contact and shut up or whatever we're supposed to do. I did not do well in masking.
Yeah, I'm rather similar.
I started to realize that I was so when people pointed out to me that I might be autistic, I started to notice it when I used to have this thing where I would get really close to people whenever I was talking to them.
Physically close to them. Physically.
Yeah. I didn't really understand social boundaries, and people would always be like, "All right, man, you're in my bubble." I'm like, "What does that mean? What's a bubble?"
Oh, hey,
bubble?
Steve, how are you?
I don't see a bubble. Where is the bubble?
Yeah.
And it sounds silly now because I actually like now I do respect people's space, but it never occurred to me before that too. Like, you know, if I'm talking to somebody, especially if I was in the middle of info dumping, I would just follow them around and start like talking to them. And I'm like, why are you so close to me, dude? Back up. And I'm like, oh.
I'd like to mention, this is not me picking on you for this. He still follows people around when he's info dumping. He still does. Not close, but he's still right there behind you because he needs to finish what he's saying.
Hello, I'm in the middle of an info dump.
Right. Like, I'm in the middle of a sentence. Why are you walking away? I understand you need
I need to tell you all about Persona for the next hour.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
I am known to keep going through the bathroom door at my husband. I'm like, I'll just stand right outside and keep going. Good with you, my guy?
Yeah, my wife tried, but I was like, no, you got to stop talking now. I'm in the bathroom.
The funny thing with Lauren is she's fine with it. She'll like be taking a bath and I'm just coming in the door, start talking to her.
Oh my God, that's so creepy to me. Oh.
She's fine with it.
So I want to jump back real quick because like there was like 3 things that I wanted to say, but I'm trying to do my best to learn how not to.
I thought he was gonna ask more questions, but I've been kind of
Hey, you know what?
Interjecting a lot more.
As long as people are talking, that's the best part. Because it'd be weird if all of us.
We could do that. Here's the silent cast.
We're just gonna mime. So the whole podcast, we're just gonna do facial expressions.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to jump back to the first thing that comes to mind because I've got a list now. All right. So the first thing on my mind, because you were describing when things get chaotic, when issues crop up, things like that, and like you need somebody to kind of take charge in that moment. I have the opposite reaction to that, which is I shut off emotionally and I can do everything methodically in the sense of here's what we do, here's what we need to do, here's the priority.
I
shut off my anxiety.
So good.
The downside to that, though, is I have to feel it eventually, right? You can't bottle up emotion permanently, but once everything gets kosher and calm, then I completely just melt down.
Interesting.
And it comes on so quickly out of nowhere. But I always tell people I'm great in a crisis situation, but the second we good, you need to let me go freak out.
Right. Right. Then I'm not going to be there. So this is the thing. Like, there's so many things I have hated about myself, especially pre-diagnosis, because I didn't understand what they were.
Right.
And this is the thing I have struggled the most with and had so much shame around is I am like, I know I'm smart. I know I'm like very strategic. I'm a good thinker, but I am the worst person to be with in a crisis. I have no executive functioning. I go into total freeze mode. And I'm so like embarrassed by that because it's so out of character. Well, it felt out of character. Like it felt hard to like integrate that with like my sense of my identity and who I am. Like I am the person you can rely on. I make a commitment and I follow through. I've never missed a deadline. Like I know how to tackle hard problems. I am incredible with logistics. Right. And then if one little thing goes wrong, I'm like, zombie girl. There's nothing. My brain is erased.
House of Cards.
Total House of Cards.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's been really hard for me.
Yes, it is.
Nice. Well done.
So I can definitely see how that would cause difficulty, especially with the shame and guilt that you'd beat yourself up about that, especially being undiagnosed. I mean, I remember being undiagnosed prior to bipolar and autism, and it was a total world of like, why in the fuck am I so goddamn weird? Why am I so different than everybody else? What the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't I shut the fuck up? Pressured speech, manic.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and then as I understood autism, I was like, oh shit, I've also been info dumping. Wait a second. Am I really just manic at times? No, there's definitely times I'm manic. And there's other times where I'm info dumping. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it was this whole identity shift and accepting these things that I hated about myself, but I shouldn't have hated myself because there was some control, but not a lot of control over it because it's just my biology kicking in, right?
Right.
And so I'm still coming through to those terms too.
You can build in the supports. So now everyone that I regularly interact with knows I'm autistic, knows that in a crisis or anywhere where I'm getting sensory overload.
Yes.
I have many great things I contribute to our relationship, but at that point I'm going to need support. Right. And so like they know what to do and I know what to do. And I'm not standing there slapping myself in the face saying, you're so stupid, do something. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, you lead right now because I do not have those skills.
My partner of... Go ahead.
I was going to say, before I knew, I used to, and I've said this before, but, I used to refer to myself as like an alien or an android or whatever, because I felt unhuman in a lot of ways because it seemed like people didn't understand me.
Yeah.
And
my thing was,
I'm trying to cue you to talk to her, not me.
Yeah. So feeling like other, but I used to cycle between like, am I smart or am I just really, really dumb and I don't understand why? And it's one of those things where it's like, if you feel like, well, if I am smart or I have all these great thoughts about things, not that I have a need to feel intelligent or smart or whatever, but the point is like, if you are, let's say you're good at something, let's say you're good at art or you're good at photography, right? Other people will see that. But because I didn't know that I was on the spectrum, it makes me feel like, well, there has to be something defective or wrong with me because other people don't see things the way I'm seeing it. So there's something wrong with the way that I'm thinking.
Right.
Well, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Could be something wrong.
What I always thought was that the way I always described it to myself and what I thought about myself was I have a bad personality. So I was like, there are lots of great things about me, but just like when they hand out things, some people are pretty, some people get nice hair, some people are funny. And like, that means some people are going to be not funny and have shitty hair or go bald or whatever. And I just got bad personality when they were handing out personalities.
I'm
too
very
bad.
happy that I'm not balding because with a shaved
you do
head,
have very nice hair.
That's what you took out of what she just said?
No, I'm just
really? That's what you took out.
If I had a shaved head, I look like Lex Luthor.
You are Lex Luthor. You just need money now.
I had a bald head once in school. Somebody shaved my head. Babysitter did it to me, by the way.
Joy.
Yeah, just for fun, she shaved my head. My mom was kind of pissed. Anyway, but everyone thought I had cancer because I looked horrible bald, so I'm very glad that I still have hair. That's all right.
That's
excellent.
what you took
Thank you for that.
That's not what I took away. It made me think of that. So
okay. All right.
Yeah,
I'm thankful.
so very interesting that in the context of a diagnosis, my bad personality is just through that, what do they call it? Like through the lens of neurotypical culture,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
but when I'm with autistic people, it doesn't feel that way at all.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've kind of, it's like I can view it through a completely different lens.
That's
but
right.
I think that is part of why, because we haven't gotten to this. I don't know if this is on your list, but the podcast that I produce and co-host is called the Autistic Culture Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so while I think there are lots of medical conditions in the world, I actually don't think of autism as a medical condition first, even though there are co-occurring medical conditions.
Yes.
I do think of it as a biological condition, but I also don't think of my brown eyes or my Italian American heritage as medical, right?
Okay.
So being Italian American, growing up in Connecticut as an Italian American, there is a very distinct culture that I can spot. And there is a way when I see someone who's an Italian American from the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, we have a bunch of shared references, most of them exploited by The Sopranos.
Mm-hmm.
And I can make a reference to Zeppeli's or New Haven Pizza, and I will be understood. People will immediately be like, oh, yeah.
I just think of Family Guy when like, hey, bobbity boo, bobbity boo.
Bobbity boo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All of that. So,
sorry.
So I think if we look at autism like a culture,
which it is,
yeah. Right? Then like you can find your people. It doesn't matter if they're diagnosed, undiagnosed. Like I can find my people really quickly, just like I can find Italian Americans.
Right.
And I'm not Russian or Russian American, but I can recognize.
Is
their
it the
culture,
train collection? Is that what gives it away?
True.
Well, see, I saw your museum back there, and I was like, "Oh, I'm at home."
It's a stereotype that autistic people like trains.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear you say the word train.
Said
trains.
I was saying she said she can pick up on our people, and I was like, "Is it the train collection that gives it away?" I was making a joke.
So,
but like,
no, but I didn't
can
hear you say train.
You probably wouldn't notice this if you are Italian American, but a lot of Italian Americans wear this necklace. It's called an Italian horn or a cornetto. And especially people from Southern Italy, like Naples and Sicily, where my ancestors are from. Yeah. And they're very tiny, but I can spot it a mile away. Right. And I will come. I'd be like, hey, paisan, like, oh, this is somebody who's in my culture. And it doesn't mean you're left out. It doesn't mean you're less than. I don't think Italian Americans are better than, I don't know, Irish Americans. It just means, oh, this is something I identify with. This is in my birthright. And so when I see someone with a museum, like my husband's best friend has the most incredible Indiana Jones museum. I mean, it's his living room.
Awesome.
But it is, and he was just doing his 50th birthday celebration in Wadi Rum and went to Petra and wore an Indiana Jones hat. Those pictures are so epic. Awesome. And to me, it doesn't matter to me if James is autistic or not. Like, I don't know. I don't care. He doesn't know. He doesn't care. Right. But I do connect with that culture.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones isn't my special interest, but I love that it's his. And I'm like, info dump. Tell me everything.
So,
what don't I know? And what are the Easter egg things?
Playing Pokemon as a child was not a game. It was work. We have to collect them all.
You really
you gotta catch them all. It says it.
You gotta fill up the Pokedex.
Yeah, it's the perfect show for all of us.
It really is. Yeah. We have a great episode on Pokemon too, by the way, on the Autistic Culture Podcast. Yes, a total info dump.
So speaking of culture, I always find it interesting when people talk about culture in general, in generalities, because they always have tendency to look at culture in almost a macro way on a regular basis. The grand identifiers, like country you're from, but culture can be all the way down to what neighborhood you're in. And people don't necessarily see all of the different layers.
Well, but they do. Like, right, I was super into Girl Scouts because got to catch them all. Had to get all those badges. So did that, managed to get them all.
And that in itself has its own culture. All the Girl Scouts hanging out together.
And everyone knows there's Girl Scout culture. Sure. Like if you say that, or like, I don't know, what are those?
My cookies.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh no, here we go. We knew this was going to happen. But like, what are those? With the sports ball, like the Green Bay Packers.
Oh yeah, people
the
who
Dallas
are fans
Cowboys
of sports teams.
That's a culture. I don't know anything about
And
it.
each
talking about, like, the
cheese
cheese heads?
Each team has its own
Cheese
rituals.
heads.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Cheese
That's
heads.
the one you're
That's
thinking
it.
of.
So people
cheese
know
heads.
that.
It took me a
but
second
when
to
you-
realize what she was talking about.
Yes, but you were on it for me. But when you say autistic culture, very often people are like, "Ooh, don't label yourself," or
Yeah,
like,
oh,
you
yeah.
don't- or, and it's like, well, but you don't tell me not to label myself as
Right.
Italian American. Are you
Right.
upset about that?
Right.
Like,
And of course not. But
right?
one,
Or
one
Girl
thing,
Scout.
Yeah. Well, one thing I find, because I do a lot of our like social media looky at other people's stuff, kind of. A lot of folks in our community have tendency, at least right now, they want to feel individualized so much so, but they still want to be called autistic. But they want to be so individualized that, well, we have nothing in common. We're all just so unique and different.
Oh, this is the if you met one autistic person, you met one autistic person. Also, by the way, if you've met one Girl Scout, you've met one Girl Scout, and if you met one Italian American, you've met one Italian American.
Yes, but there are certain things that
sure.
make us similar that we can connect with.
I
and
think
that's
it's the
thing
difference
about
between
community.
the difference between like culture and stereotype. I think is what you're talking about. Like, stereotypes don't necessarily have to be negative, but you can only make so many assumptions. Like, if I know that you're Italian and you grew up in a certain area, I can make some assumptions that are most likely true, but it doesn't mean that they're all true. But if I knew you grew up in Connecticut, I don't know what's a common thing about Connecticut, but
Well, actually, I can tell
New
you.
Haven pizza.
I grew up
because I moved to Massachusetts. I can tell you what most people say when I say I'm from Connecticut. Oh, you must have had money.
Well, I grew up in
Oh,
That's
yeah,
not
that's
true
funny.
at all. That is
I'm like,
so not true.
when people do that, I'm like, oh, but I'm from the other Connecticut.
Right. That's
Right,
what I say
like,
too.
I'm from the other Connecticut.
Yeah.
I grew up in Freetown, which is
Yeah.
known for the state forest and all that. There's lots of trees, so
Oh,
people would
okay.
assume like, oh, you grew up in the woods,
Right.
and well, kind of. So, but you can make some assumptions. It doesn't mean that they're all going to be correct, but it's it's an educated guess based on information you have about the person. But I think there's a line that crosses over from culture to just stereotypes or making too many assumptions.
That's what you thought I was talking about?
No, I was talking.
So we did there's a kind of a standard of what is culture. So this guy, Geert Hofstede, he's a Dutch social psychologist.
Yeah.
And he actually did this breakdown of what is culture. There are 6 dimensions. I think the dude's died now, and somebody came up with a 7th one in his organization.
Extra has been added to it,
there's an extra. But anyway, there's the core 6 dimensions of culture that have been established. And one of our episodes, we go through autistic culture and how and where we hit. So there's 6 dimensions. And then in each dimension, there's like a scale with 2 ends of the scale. And like, for instance, one aspect is your culture more collectivist or individualistic? And then it's a sliding scale, and different countries and different cultures fit somewhere else on that sliding scale. So my co-host Matt and I went through those dimensions as social psychologists to kind of identify what makes us.
Autism would be more individualistic,
that's awesome.
right? I mean, I would guess because of the
I
fact
think that's where we ended up with it. We kind of debated each of the 6.
I mean,
no, that's not to say
relatively.
like we are closest to, I think it might have been Dutch culture. It might have been Norwegian. We talk about it on the episode, but we like tracked it compared to different countries. But obviously everyone in that country isn't the same.
Right. I was just about to bring up like subsets of cultures inside of larger groups.
Hi, my name is John Autism Longbyon.
Yeah, there you go. Because like there are social expectations, no matter what culture you're part of, there are certain things that are social expectations, right? Even in the autistic community. Although somebody probably heard me say that and they're like, what do you mean social expectations?
So autism culture is Skyrim?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So in every group there is social expectations, but there's always a group inside, a smaller culture, a counterculture, if you will.
Subculture? Is
You know what I mean?
call
There's
it.
always a smaller group of a counterculture to it, but they
It's
themselves
like
have
if
their
you look
own
at music,
culture of
like
being counter.
There's punk rock,
Yes,
culture,
yes.
and then there's subcultures within punk rock.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's rock music, and then there's metal, punk, easy listening.
Thank you
light
for this.
rock. Yeah.
You found the rabbit hole. But
Yeah, we did.
So
Yeah.
there it is. I found it.
So it fascinates me because I work in mental health, because I work in helping field. It's interesting to me how far people are unwilling to look at the line of culture down that influences us, that influence anybody. And then autistic people are no different in that way. We still have experiences we went through on all of those levels of things, and it influences us all the way through our life. But they don't want to take into account all that. They only want to look at like surface level stuff.
What I find interesting when it comes to the cultural stuff is morality. And I've talked to you before about this, about what subjective morality.
Yeah, subjective morality.
That's what I find interesting, is because we will judge things based on our culture and our experiences, but in other cultures, different things are considered acceptable or not acceptable, even if we disagree with them on a very fundamental level. I brought up there are cultures that do things that we would consider very inappropriate. There's a tribe.
We don't need examples.
Yeah,
we're all on point, right? We're all
in the realm
he's
going to give us an example right now. What is the tribe?
No. Well, I could bring up the example of in ancient Greece, how they used to.
There you go.
With the boys and the men and the boys.
Let's go with that one.
Stuff. But we would consider that inappropriate. But in their culture, I'm just saying that as an example of something that's like there's subjective morality, right? I mean yes. we think it's gross. I think it's weird. But they did that, like,
or even
how do you wrap your head around like what
royal families marrying cousins,
inbreeding and all that?
Like, it's clearly not acceptable, not even legal. But within
they had there were justifications for it.
Well,
everybody has to rationalize what they're doing.
I was gonna
always
bring up the example of the tribe. I believe it's in, I think it's in New Guinea. Papua New Guinea, there's a tribe. Well, there's one tribe that eats their dead.
There you go.
And then there was the other tribe, which, in order for boys to become men, they have to perform a sexual act with other boys.
I knew you were going to give that example.
But it's an example of something that in their culture is normal, that in our culture we would consider it inappropriate. Right. And that's all my point I was trying to get at is that there's how do you wrap your head around subjective morality? Like, because there's things that we have our own moral compass and things that we think are fundamentally wrong or right. But then, like, what if my culture, we do certain things, like there's cultures.
Let's talk about autistic culture.
Yeah.
In our culture, like what we've been talking about, it is appropriate to only form a conclusion once you have facts.
Yeah.
Like that is culturally what we find acceptable. And yet we are a subculture of a broader culture that says you should start with conclusions and then find facts to support them. Like that is what we face all the time. And that is what the double empathy problem
feels wrong to me. So it must be wrong.
Right.
Therefore, I'm going to have confirmation bias and find out.
You're wrong. Like subjective morality, like this is one of the things that I think is so powerful about understanding double empathy problem versus when I was first diagnosed, I was told the problem was theory of mind. I didn't have theory of mind and I didn't have empathy. Right.
Okay.
Which do you know this whole debate?
So
why don't you tell us about it?
Is there anybody who doesn't? Are there really any people who don't have any level of empathy at all?
There's not really anybody who
sociopath
has no. Well, but they don't have no empathy.
But that would be an exception.
No, it's not that they have none. They have a low ability to have empathy.
But I'm saying
even somebody empathize.
Even somebody who's a sociopath, I'm assuming have some.
Yeah. Well, I'm not necessarily either. It's just like one of the misconceptions about autistic people was that we had a lack of empathy, and everybody assumed that meant no empathy, and it didn't mean no empathy. It just meant our expression of empathy was to a lesser degree.
I don't think it is to a lesser degree.
No. That's the belief it was. That's the belief it was.
So that's the whole thing about when you really look at the double empathy problem as a cultural problem.
Okay.
If I knew I were autistic a whole lot younger, I wouldn't have thought that I had a bad personality. I would have thought I was in another culture. If you are an exchange student in Japan and you're an American girl who grew up in Connecticut, you're going to look like you have a terrible personality.
Yeah.
Like, what, like you're going to be so culturally inappropriate,
Right.
kind of what you're talking about with subjective morality. You're going to be doing these super rude things all the time, pointing your feet randomly at, you know, people
handing
who are
money to a clerk is rude.
Well, yeah, because you don't know the
handing
norms.
money to a clerk because you don't know the norms.
Yeah.
So when you look at double empathy, which means the Japanese people have a problem understanding me because they don't know American culture.
Right.
And then me as a dumb American girl who didn't take cultural sensitivity classes.
Okay.
I don't understand them. So I'm not empathetic to them. They're not empathetic to me. How do we solve this? It's pretty easy. What they do with exchange students
Exposure?
is, they put all the Japanese host parents go to a class and they're like, here's what American culture is. When your kid comes, they might point their feet at you. And then you take all the American kids before they go to be an exchange student. You're like, hey, while you're there, don't hand money to a clerk and don't point your feet at people.
Right.
And so all of those,
that doesn't mean suicide.
That doesn't mean you get it right. It doesn't mean you don't make mistakes.
Right.
But the top level understanding when you're an exchange student, I want to come back, Stephen, to your idea of being an alien. The top level assumption when you're an exchange student is there is going to be culture shock.
Right.
You are going to mess up as the exchange student. Host parents, you are going to mess up. And the way we solve this,
have a little more
we
leeway
all
with
talk
those
about it.
Right.
Right.
Communication.
You
right there.
felt like an
Education to each other.
alien.
Yeah.
Because nobody told you, Stephen, oh, by the way, you're going to be an exchange student your whole life.
I think the empathy thing that you were talking about, in my case...
You mean the double empathy thing she was talking about?
No, well, sort of, but there was something you mentioned before about empathy. You guys were talking about not being able to empathize, or people assuming that autistic people didn't empathize well.
At one point they believed that.
In my case, I did have a hard time empathizing with people in certain instances, or in many instances, if I didn't understand what was going on in a social context. So, for instance, if something bad happened to somebody, but I didn't understand very well, like sometimes I wouldn't understand why I should feel bad for somebody.
Well, I'll give you one. I'll give you one for me. When my grandmother died, I was 12 years old. Yeah. She was some old lady who, I don't know, made me food, but she also like always criticized me for singing or rocking or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I didn't hate the lady, but I didn't hang out with her. I was 12. I was super into my friends. I did not cry when my grandmother died. I didn't make the connection. This is probably really shitty for my mom. I didn't realize she was young. Yeah. She seemed like an old lady to me. She had gray hair. Right. Gray hair, old people. She looked kind of like Mrs. Claus as far as I was concerned. So I was like, Mrs. Claus is very old. So she must be old, and old people die. And why are we surprised?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I mean. Is like, there are a lot of times where it would appear to people like I might not be empathetic growing up because I didn't know what other people were going.
Feign the emotionality.
But once I learned. Like, for instance, there are certain things that have a strong emotional impact on me from an empathy standpoint. Once I learned more about the
Hallmark
subject.
Ads.
I was going to talk about one thing that always gets me emotional is that Daryl Davis guy that I've mentioned a bunch of times on the show. Oh, yeah. He's a black gentleman who makes friends with people in the KKK and ends up collecting their robes. So he befriends them. Yeah. And then once he becomes really good friends with them, they end up like... He has a whole collection of KKK hoods and robes. And the fact that he is willing to go out of his way to do that.
To understand another human being.
Look at you, because autistic culture, social justice sensitivity. We get very emo about social justice issues like that when somebody like is willing to go that far to connect.
Instead of just saying, fuck that guy. He's like, hey, buddy, why don't you come over and have dinner at my house? And he's like, well, I don't like black people. Okay, that's cool. You want to come have dinner? Yeah, and he invites them over, and then eventually they're like, "Wait a minute, I can't do this anymore because my best friend now is a black guy, and like this doesn't make any sense." There's only so much cognitive dissonance you can tolerate. At some point, you're like, "All right, this doesn't make sense," and they give it up. But not many people are willing to go that far, even in their daily lives on a small scale. I'm not saying that every black person out there should be willing to tolerate somebody who's in the KKK and befriend them and change their mind.
A lot of emotional labor.
Yes, exactly. So it's going to be something that's hard for a lot of people to do, but and you shouldn't have to necessarily deal with that. That's not your problem, right? But just on a small scale, tolerating other differences in people,
right,
and having some level of empathy or trying to understand that the good people can be driven to horrible ideas, or have shitty ideas, and not just instantly writing those people off or hating them.
He's not willing to write people off. And he goes to an extreme of that because he goes to a level of
exposure
confronting
therapy.
somebody who clearly hates him up front. But not a lot of the times people write other people off because they don't use their blinker on the fucking highway.
I would say it's like exposure therapy, right?
That's exactly what it is.
He's desensitizing them because a lot of these guys who are involved in this stuff, they don't even know any black people.
Right.
And he's like, you hang around them long enough and they start to realize that all of the preconceptions they have and all of the stereotypes and all the things that they actually believe are wrong, and they're like, well, shit. So I don't know, that to me is something that causes an emotional reaction.
But that goes back to Angela's point right there of communication, of talking to one another, understanding one another, and actually understanding each other from a humanistic point of view, opposed to the label or grouping that we assume somebody in.
To me, that's the 2-step process. So my first mission is get everyone in the world to recognize autism as a culture as much as we recognize Irish as a culture, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then once we do that, we're going to understand, there are going to be some cultural differences here. Let me understand what those are so that I can connect with this culture in a more meaningful way, especially if I have loved ones who are autistic, which most of us do. Like that, just statistically, you're going to be either working with or dating or have a kid who's dating or have a kid who's autistic. Like there are a lot of us out there. I think we're actually underdiagnosed. I don't think like people are like, it's an epidemic. I think autism, and we're at like
because of all the vaccines.
And scene.
Bye,
everyone. It's been a great show. We'll be back next week.
I got 4 or 5 MMRs. How many do you have?
Gotta catch them all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It was a joke. A joke.
People know it's a joke.
I have to go to bed now. Happy times.
Everybody knows that's a joke for us.
Yes.
We've talked about it in many an episode of just our actual
make fun of the whole vaccine thing.
He really does.
Yeah,
it's great.
I mock it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You do. So,
still do not. There are people that are not mocking it, though.
Yes, there are people who actually still believe it. Yeah.
I say it.
Of course.
I say it. Of course. Tongue in cheek. But
There are still people who believe that the shape of your skull determines shit about who you are and your abilities in life. There are still people who believe in phrenology.
Autistic acupuncture shirt that I
made. Yeah, which I
made
find
a joke.
That shirt hilarious.
Somebody asked me to make it, by the way. But I made
did.
a shirt up on our merch page. It's called Autistic Acupuncture, and it's a vaccine needle.
And it has an image of our. It has little vaccine little balls in it that is actually our image.
So that's nice.
We are injecting. Yeah. Well, because in one of our episodes, he made a joke of an autistic acupuncture chair.
Oh, you just sit down.
It was just a random joke.
Yeah, you just sit down and there's a bunch of MMR needles that go into you.
Oh my god!
My bracelet went off. My wife's telling me she loves me. Nice.
Oh.
For Valentine's Day, or rather, should I say, for the Thursday before Valentine's Day, I got us the bracelets. That way, no matter where we are, we can tell each other.
You're connected. Yep. I love that.
All right, did I upset you with the vaccine joke?
No. It's so dark, though. It's so dark.
I think we should mock it because it's so stupid.
I think so too.
It's so ridiculous that it's.
So I have a question for you guys because we
all the science points the other direction.
We have something in common because we both have autism related podcasts, right?
Yes.
So I get a lot of emails. I bet you guys get a lot of emails of people suggesting show topics to me who have not listened to my show,
right?
And I would like to know, do you get the crazies that I get asking to be on your show talking about like
conspiracy stuff?
Yes.
No, we haven't had any conspiracy. No.
Not yet.
We've
Oh
had
my
people
God.
ask us to
Not
talk
yet.
about things that are not related to autism.
Oh, yeah.
We've had
Oh,
people-
that's great. We
yeah.
love that. We just did a show on Magic the Gathering all day long. Oh, wait, that is related to autism.
Yeah, it really is.
Just remember.
I've never been to a Magic tournament where there wasn't like 900 kids who were on the spectrum.
It's so good. It's so good. No, literally, like I have the nicest, I think it's because I'm a lady. I have these really nice autism moms who are like nice white ladies. And they're like, I have found some treatments that are really turned my kid around.
Oh, yeah.
And I would love to share.
I actually,
I'm
I've heard one of these. Somebody told me, I hope I don't get in trouble for this.
How about the crystal
Stem
people?
cells. I've been told that stem cells
Oh,
help
stem cells.
Yes.
Oh, I haven't gotten that one yet. Yes.
Someone told me
I-
that they injected their kids with stem cells and that helped reduce their
Oh,
autistic
baby.
traits.
Hey, right, hey,
Oh,
all right.
honey.
So they
Yes.
paid like,
Not true,
$12,000 to get their kid
Yeah.
injected with stem cells.
I want to have an orphanage for all
How-
these children. I
how
would
about-
like
how
to
about-
take them all.
They're like,
in
well, they got
with their-
better after the stem cells. What do you mean by
Oh,
got better?
Well, I
God.
mean,
Oh,
that's the
God.
thing too. Like
They
years
couldn't talk
ago-
beforehand. Now
Yeah.
they can talk. Okay.
That's
okay.
called developing.
Yeah.
So like, I also knew of, or at least I read of people who would give like CBD to their fucking kids, and like to help calm shit down and all. Like, really?
Well, I think CBD is better
We'll
than
give
some
them
of the stuff I've
edibles.
heard.
Oh yeah,
The
no,
stuff on
CBD is
Facebook.
way better than some of the shit.
So
I've heard.
we're in a lot of autism groups on Facebook and social media, and I've been surprised by some of the shit I've heard parents say. I'm not a parent, but I've heard people talk about purposely medicating their child because they couldn't deal with them.
Oh yeah.
But they're talking about like parents telling other parents to go, hey, go out and get X, Y, and Z drug, which is a strong sedative.
Yeah.
They were talking about like one of their kids destroys things. It was a young boy.
But
he was
this
autistic.
is,
And I was talking
what
about, I said, why don't you try to channel that behavior into something that's not destructive or give them something they can destroy?
Hold on. I will say this much, though, okay? Because of what I do for a living, and I do work with people who have 24-hour care,
Yes.
sometimes that medication is what is needed to help reduce down some of that explosive or impulsive behavior.
Yes, but
It
this
is
person
needed.
was talking about
But-
sedating their kid to the point where they can't do anything.
And I remember that comment. You're right. And unfortunately, far too often, that's the go-to is give me a drug to correct whatever this is.
So this
That's a
is why,
go-to
again,
problem.
I come back to this like exchange student metaphor.
Sure.
Does anyone in Japan need to be medicated for anything? Of course. But are we going to medicate all Japanese people to make them not Japanese? Like, that's
No,
eugenics.
we shouldn't do
We're
that.
not
Yeah,
doing that. That's not
Yeah,
good.
we should actually respond
So
to that. No.
It's like
it's because
when
these
you-
parents don't want to. They don't want to. Well, they don't want to deal with like. Yes, it is extra responsibility, extra burden on you as a parent to have to try to direct this behavior in some other way, right?
So-
if they're destroying stuff and you have to take time out to try to give them things they can destroy or try to move that into something that's not destructive, right? That's going to take effort from you as a parent.
It is, but I do want to point out though, like,
sorry, I'm the asshole without
there's
kids
no-
talking about how people should parent.
There's no like great teaching. There's no great instruction on how to raise a kid on autism, for one, because of the varying degree of things, because of the difficulties that can come with that as a parent, especially when they're very young and the kid can't communicate, or maybe the kid doesn't communicate
I
at
hope
all.
I'm not coming across as too judgy. I'm just saying.
But
I think
I want to make sure
feels
we're
bad
putting
to me
a little bit of context on it too,
to just
because
medicate
some
the
of the
kid.
people that we read stuff online, they're parents who are talking about their kid just getting loud or fixating on something or stimming. There are people who like one of the people we follow on TikTok.
Here, kid, here's his Xanax.
He's a dad, and he has a level 3 and a level 2. A level 1 and a level 3. People constantly criticize him when he talks about things they do to try to help his profound autism daughter, and he always responds with, well, if you ain't raising her, then you have no idea what that is like. Because people are like, well, my child just needs a little bit of quiet time to calm down. No, that doesn't make any sense for his daughter at all, right? Or at least that's how he says it. So there is some misconception with that, and there's no good one place to go to learn how to help your child in that way. There's a lot of trial and error process, but that's parenting in general. There's a lot of trial and error process, right? But there's no one grand place. Like, the go-to at one point was always ABA. And regardless of somebody's opinion about ABA or where it's gotten to or how shitty some of the practitioners are compared to what it's used for, it does help some folks. Unfortunately, it was a blanket like way of, oh, this is how we're going to deal with autistic traits. It does help some people. There are other things out there, like that one woman we were going to interview at one point who talked about DIR, floor play or something like that. That's another option that's out there. There's other things like, if you can, talk to your kid and find out and help
and
learn to be in their world.
I'm not an expert, and I don't claim to have answers, especially being that I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to sit here and criticize. I'm not going to sit here and criticize people on their parenting. All I had issue with, because I offered an alternative solution,
right?
But it doesn't mean that my solution is correct. It's just that I thought that just drugging your kid up is not necessarily the first thing to go to. And that to me feels bad. It feels like you're it feels like you're punishing the kid for being autistic, and you're handling it just by pumping them full of drugs. That's how it feels to me.
It sounds that way, essentially.
Because you can't handle the fact that they're a little loud or that they're...
Sorry. Yes. I was going to say, I don't want to diminish the effect of what that volume can be, because at times that volume can be much louder than people think. Like, some people think that, like, oh, your kid's being loud. Well, every kid's loud.
I'm very sensitive.
No, it's a consistent, and it's a volume at which just grates on you at times.
I'm very sensitive. I'm not sensitive to all sound, but people talking, especially people talking loudly, does bother me quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I've kind of desensitized myself when it comes to, like, your daughter.
Yeah. Well, I am too now. Because I've been there for 7 years.
It doesn't really affect me the way it used to. But
well, I just also want to make sure that we're putting a little bit total context on it, because far too often when people talk about raising an autistic kid, they have tendency to not talk about level 2s and 3s. They talk about raising a level 1, and that's very, very different. It's almost night and day different.
Yeah.
In that way, one person has some emotional regulation issues. The other one has almost a complete lack of emotional regulation, and it's just different.
Did we lose you?
Sorry, Angela.
No. We
end up talking to each other a lot.
I'm in the not an expert camp on this one, but I will say that from our mission at the Autistic Culture Podcast is really about, like, these issues are important, and I'm glad you guys are tackling them, and whoever else is. Like, we are all about celebrating our culture. There's so many awesome things about autistic culture, about our about autistic accents, which I will say, Nick, you do have quite a delightful autistic accent that I am enjoying here.
Thank you.
I've never heard that term before.
Autistic accents?
Yeah. Other people would just say the autistic voice.
Yeah.
I have heard that. Or like,
she calls it an accent to be positive about it.
Yeah, to me, it is like, when I hear it, it's like seeing a cannoli, right? I love autistic
You're
food.
a cannoli.
I've always wanted to be stuffed with white stuff.
Some chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
I just saw a meme.
I do love autistic food.
Yep.
There's some
Comfy
incredible autistic music out there. Obviously, no one can top our films. We actually, did you know, an autistic person invented motion pictures? The very first motion pictures were an autistic guy. And it's an incredible story. Animation, almost all of early animation, voice artists, cartoons. We just did an awesome episode on Community, the TV show Community. So we have, like, Parks and Rec, The Good Place, like, so many incredible creators out there in TV and film. And then obviously technology, so much of technology. Our Steve Jobs episode is, like, so much fun. Do you know that a very common co-occurrence in autism is a fear or hatred of buttons? And this has to do with our sensory sensitivity. So if you imagine a shirt with buttons and being able to feel where each of the buttons were, like hitting your skin, and then just being like, I never, ever, ever want a button.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve Jobs, autistic, hated buttons, completely hated them. So he finds that black mock turtleneck when he's in Japan.
Did he ever say that he suspected he was autistic?
Well, I don't even remember that from our research, but our focus is on autistic culture, and he perfectly embodies autistic culture. So he goes
so you
to Japan.
Incorporated him into it then?
Yeah. Our thing is to look for traits of autistic culture and feature them, right? So he goes to Japan and he sees these shirts with no buttons. He's like, I must have these shirts. So he orders 50 because we love a little same shirting. We love a little uniforming. So he buys them. So he goes back to work, goes back to Apple, and he's like, you guys, I have the best idea. We're all going to get uniforms. So at work, we can all wear the same thing every day. And everyone at work is like, no, thanks, my guy. Going to pick out my own clothes, not have you pick them out.
Sure.
So he's like, okay, fine. I will wear the same thing every day. So he wears the famous Steve Jobs uniform that we all know and love, like beautiful expression of our fashion sense. And then he's like walking by some guy's desk and he's got a mouse, a computer mouse. And it was before, he's like a product engineer, is before they had put in the buttons.
Yep.
And so Steve Jobs walks over and he sees this mouse and he's like, oh my God, I love this. This is brilliant. A mouse without buttons. And the guy's like, well, no, they didn't drill him yet. He's like, no. This is what I now demand. We must have computer mice without buttons. And the guy is like, how the hell am I going to invent a mouse without buttons? But of course, we now have mice without buttons, phones without buttons, that all sprung from the wellspring that is autistic culture. It's the same thing as his shirt, the no buttons on the mice.
So I've heard on like listening to other podcasts and stuff like that, a lot of wealthy people or entrepreneurs, CEOs, people who are rich, successful, whatever. A lot of those people will wear the same thing every day.
Yes.
But
minimizing choice.
Yeah. So I've heard that reason given for it is like, because I don't have to think about what to wear.
Yeah. Barack Obama does that too. Yeah. And again, like Irish people eat cannolis, right? So I'm not saying like,
no. I was just
other reasons, but it's very common. Andy Warhol, who is also an amazing representation of autistic culture. I talked about autistic food, so nothing better than he was obsessed with tomato soup, and every single day he had Campbell's tomato soup, and then eventually did that famous picture, right? But what you probably don't know is what is on the back of that picture. Any guesses? What would you put on the back of a picture of tomato soup?
The ingredients?
Oh, good guess. No.
That's actually quite funny. I like that.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
A grilled cheese.
Oh, that makes sense too. Right? You know, you mentioned cannoli.
To go together.
I saw this is a cannoli thing. Because you said cannoli a few times. I saw a meme before we started recording, and it was Ben Kenobi's head on top of a cannoli. So it was Obi-Wan cannoli.
That's awesome.
I'd eat that.
I know, right? Wait, which Ben Kenobi?
Adam Driver?
What?
No, I don't know.
Ewan McGregor or Alec Guinness?
Oh, those are my options.
Yeah, because they both played Ben Kenobi.
Oh, got it. I was on the cannolis. Ewan McGregor. Oh, God, I don't know. I feel like I'd go Ewan McGregor though, but I understand the pull to Alex, but I don't know. I am a little bit of a Ewan McGregor fan. So
see, there you go. Then he's pretty.
I'd have two cannolis.
If he walks in the room with a box of cannolis and says, "Hello there."
Right,
see,
exactly.
There you go. That's what I was thinking.
General Cannoli.
Anyway, I think we have lots to celebrate, and so there are many hard decisions and discussions and processing that we all need to do as autistic people, but we have also contributed so much. First Stone Tools, First Iron Bridge, calculus, like all autistic culture. So we have like an incredible birthright to celebrate.
Or even Temple and the stuff that she contributed. We
right,
sure,
right. Somebody who is diagnosed with autism and accepts that.
Well, I guess the meat industry, whatever, raising cattle,
right,
and all the stuff that she's
humanely.
Yeah.
I would say
the cattle industry completely.
Anybody who is autistic, and if you're interested in autistic culture, you should play Persona. Because it's another collectathon.
You did get me excited about that. I am excited about that.
Because you got to collect all your personas.
I was waiting for you to work it into the episode somehow.
Well, it's a collectathon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we like collecting stuff.
That's it.
You like ticking off the boxes, okay?
Yeah.
I'm one of those people.
I do love to tick a box.
When I play a game, I'm usually a completionist. I have to tick all the boxes off. I have to do everything. I have to get every item, do every side quest.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions.
Oh,
guaranteed.
Like Assassin's Creed type games, I won't do everything because they're useless.
I have the opposite rule. So this is very interesting. I have a no side quest rule.
Just main quest only.
Once I do one, then I have to do them all. You can't just randomly, I'm going to do this side quest and not the others.
Yeah.
So I have like a hard and fast. I don't even let myself see them. I am like focused on the task at hand.
My exception would be the games where the side quests are either very repetitive or just collecting stupid items.
Right.
Like some of those types of quests I won't do. But if it's a game like The Witcher 3 or we played Baldur's Gate 3 where the side quests are actually like interesting stories or you get interesting items for doing them.
Well, and they do actually contribute to the main quest too, because you're able to level up your character enough where you can actually take on the main storyline.
Or you get cool items and spells and stuff.
Yeah, like Skyrim, you don't have to do any side quests if you just do the main quest. You get all the way through the damn thing.
Some people never play the main quest in Skyrim; they just run around and.
That's true. Actually, they don't do anything. Yeah, that's true.
It's like people who play Grand Theft Auto and never actually play any of the main story missions. They just run around the city.
So I think maybe we've taken too much time from you, Angela. We've taken over an hour, and I really appreciate the fact that you gave us over an hour already. But we are going to have to let you go because I don't want to take up too much of your life. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Now, is there anything you'd like to throw out there, promote anything whatsoever to any of our listeners?
I would just love people to come over to autisticculturepodcast.com. We're on every podcast player. You can find our Substack, and we have lots of great articles and videos as well as our podcast stream. And so, so come check us out.
Go watch a celebration of autistic stuff. Yes. If I can say it in my autistic way.
You said it perfectly, my friend.
Yeah, I always get described as not sounding enthusiastic enough until making fun of something.
I was thinking that it would be funny with her to do like a rapid fire like list of things, and you can say, is this autistic culture or not?
Oh, I love it.
But I was, you're like, hey, Star Trek, autistic culture or not?
Oh, way autistic.
So,
I don't have a list though. I'd have to come up with a list. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Come up with a list.
Next time around, let's go with that.
So I can just throw them at you. Like
absolutely.
We are happy. We are happy to come back. I'm happy to come back. I talked about myself in the plural because my co-host is Matt Lauria, and you should have him on the show. He's funnier than me. So
I wouldn't say that.
He's our comic. He's our comic relief on the show.
I like very much. He's mine. So
yeah. You got to have a sidekick. I learned that from Batman.
I'm definitely his sidekick. I just he makes way more jokes than I do, but I'm definitely his sidekick.
Okay.
I will always put myself second to Steve.
Is that because he has the big chair?
No, it's because he's talented. Yep. I just look good.
I used to have a sidekick. It was on T-Mobile.
That's right. I'm Vanna. Yeah, I always identified with Vanna way more than Pat.
Yeah,
Pat had to talk to people. Vanna just had to turn shit.
You just flip the letters.
Yeah, that's
and
it.
Look cute.
Yeah, that's it. I just got to be there in a fancy dress and turn the letter.
Anyway. You guys, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. It's been
so
fun
much.
jamming out with you.
All right. Thank you very much, Angela. You have a really wonderful day, all right? Enjoy your weekend.
You guys too.
Thank you. Bye.
Special thanks to our Patreon subscribers. Thank you, Ray Hansen,